Hi, I'm Sharon Renfro. Our Hearts and Minds at SharonRenfro.com believes that we must open our minds to be able to open our hearts to one another, a fundamental idea of an alternative way to understand the psychology of relationships. This means that the key to successful, meaningful, long-term, connected, committed relationships is our ability to think. Today's video, Why Should I Spend Time Thinking About My Relationship, applies the 3 steps of thinking to answer that question. Now, I'm going to briefly define each step of thinking, followed by giving examples of that so that you can begin to learn how to apply these 3 steps of thinking to your relationship issues. So, let's get started. Step 1 of thinking is to research, and that means to gather pertinent and objective information. Number 1, we have 3 assessment systems available to us to be able to assess our individual safety in our relationships. Number 2, each assessment system also provides adaptive strategies specific to that assessment system. Number 3, we are meant to choose the appropriate assessment system for the circumstances, which depends on our self-awareness. I'm going to give you a brief example going off script here. The snowshoe hare was a brown hare, and it turns white during winter to be able to use protective camouflage in the snow. But in seasons when there's very little snow or no snow at all, the snowshoe hare does not turn white, which would make it more vulnerable to predation. Now, I don't know the mechanisms behind it, but that snowshoe hare knows that it shouldn't turn white in winters where there's little snow. It's aware of itself and its surroundings. It knows what's adaptive and what's not adaptive. So it doesn't use an adaptive strategy when it would be maladaptive for it. And that's what I'm saying about the human beings, basically. Okay. So number 4, the emotional system is meant to assess physically dangerous situations, and it allows us to behave using conflict, distance, pretend, or cut off if threatened. Those are all strategies found in nature: fight, flight, camouflage, and play dead. The subjective system, the second level, is meant to be sort of a check and a balance system, and it generates the sensation of feelings. It's supposed to enhance the emotional assessment. It provides adaptive advantages through feelings, and so negative feelings would reinforce the emotional sense of threat, and positive feelings would reinforce the emotional assessment of safety. Feelings, therefore, intensify the emotions of anxiety or calm. Those are the 2 emotions: anxiety when threatened, calm when safe. Now, the objective system is the 3rd system that has evolved in terms of our assessment systems, and it is actually meant to assess complex circumstances in which there's no immediate physical threat. The objective system allows us to actually think. Step 2 of thinking is to reason, to apply logical conclusions to understand how the information that we've gathered is related to one another, which produces a deep understanding of our circumstances. We can understand ourselves more deeply, and we can understand relationship process more deeply. Number 1. Most of the time, our relationships with our relationship partners do not result in a physical threat to us as an individual. Now, sometimes it does, and if it does, that's something that you should be really concerned about. I'm not covering it in this video, but you need to take action to protect yourself. Number 2, because our brains are immature and we are initially unable to think, and because the failure to form relationships early in life represents a physical danger to individual survival, we must assess everything that happens to us at an emotional level. It's the first thing that happens anytime you experience anything They're scary. Number 3, when you're using a lizard brain. Okay, number 3. As we mature, we're able to use feelings to refine our emotional assessment. Number 4, conventional psychology promotes the belief that we must focus on our feelings to make relationship decisions, which leaves us actually dependent on emotionally reactive behaviors to negotiate our relationships. I don't think advising people to use a lizard brain with feelings is a very good idea, but okay. Number 5, the behaviors of conflict, fight, distance, flight, pretend, camouflage, and cutoff, play dead cannot solve relationship problems. They're too simple. These behaviors are only meant to return the individual to safety right now. It doesn't figure in enough information. Number 6, in order to solve problems, we need to genuinely consider our relationship partner by using empathy and looking into the future for long-term solutions. We have to think. Number 7, generally we do not learn to think before we begin our adult relationships, and that's scary in and of itself. But nobody knows that we need to learn this, so nobody takes the time to teach us. But it's an essential step to have mature adult relationships. The third step of thinking is reflection, and that means that we're using our understanding to increase our self-awareness even further, so that we recognize we are only one part of a system. We can look at the future now and make decisions based on what's best for the future. We can see consequences to behavior, and we can also now use empathy, which is the very highest order of thinking. We can consider each other as well as ourselves. Number 1, if you want a meaningful, long-term, sustainable connection with a relationship partner, you have to think. Number 2, we're not taught to think about our relationships, so you're going to have to find a way to learn to do that. And this is a really good exercise to use. Number 3, in order to short-circuit destructive, emotional, immature reactions, you have to learn to think. Number 4, therefore, it's important, it's essential to set aside time for disciplined thought about your relationship. That is so critical. I can't even tell you how important it is. Number 5, you have to open your mind so that you can open your heart. Now, if these ideas have been beneficial to you, like us so that others can find us and they may get the help that they need. You can also find more information and in-depth discussion of these ideas in our free podcast series, Our Hearts and Minds, The Psychology of Relationships, at Castbox or at SharonRenfro.com. And thank you for listening.